was struck by what felt like a tension to me, but tell me if I'm wrong, between sort of a description of experiences in which, for instance, in Mark, your presentation, there's a desire to sort of step outside of ourselves. I think you used the phrase, sort of go beyond our own experience through design fiction, and a shift in the way we experience exhibitions or travel, where we are very much individually at the center of things. We are at the heart of the experience as individuals. We may be extending ourselves, but the focus, the spotlight is on us to some degree. Does that resonate with you guys? Do you see a tension there? And like, what do you think about that?
Well, yeah, for mine it was more, we're too much focused on ourselves, where we have this inability to imagine what other people might need, or especially as it's related to the future, we're predicting 10 years from now what we want in 10 years, but in 10 years it's going to be children of millennials, it's not going to be us. So I think there's a need for methods and ways to just stop, to get out of your head. So yeah, step outside of yourselves. And I think maybe it's the same thing with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, you say that we're looking more at individual experiences, but at the same time, in order to design something for those individual experiences, we've got to look at the entire picture, a larger cross-sectional group.
Yeah, I was interested, Jenny, in the idea of non-travel. If in your mind that approach to travel, like, can you get lost, for instance, in non-travel? In the same way, you disappear from the experience if it is inherently a personal, almost private experience.
I think that would be where the potential of non-travel would lie. If you could actually design non-travel as though you were designing a travel experience. I have yet to figure out exactly how you can get lost or take a souvenir away from non-travel.
Yeah, and also there's something interesting about, well, many things interesting about your presentation. When you think about the role of the individual in this sort of curated experience, either self-curated or curated for, is there a performative component to that? You know, when we visit an exhibition, the incredible photo of people taking photos of the Mona Lisa, presumably so that they can tell other people that they saw the Mona Lisa. Is that a component of what you think about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in my thesis, and I think it's a very current observation in general, that I think social media, smartphones have made our experiences, daily life experiences, very performative, just because now anything that we do see can be part of like this persona that Mark was talking about as well, that we've created on other digital platforms, on social media. So so I think there is a very, very big part of that. And also I think that performance holds a very important place in the curatorial practice today, because the same way I talked about exhibitions as experiences, I think they are looking for not just experiences, but more performative experiences. So yeah, I think it's at many different levels, performance holds a very important place, and I think it would be really interesting to research that deeply as well.
I think what's lost with all of ours is the opportunity for happy coincidence. You already know what the Mona Lisa looks like. You already maybe have an understanding. Really all we're putting ourselves in a position for is disappointment with the reality of what's happening. So when you're at the Mona Lisa, you're taking a picture, but you've already seen it a million times, so you're just surprised how small it is. When you actually get to France, like it's not what it was when you're sitting in your hotel room or whatever you're doing. And in my case, probably should have thought of an example for myself before I started this. I think it's more about, like, you get to the future and it's like people who are constantly complaining about not having hoverboards because of Back to the Future, that kind of stuff, where there's unmet expectations that is a risk of what's happening with all of ours, I think.
It's interesting, it struck me that non-travel was actually potentially an example of what you were pushing for in the design fiction conversation, that it was a form of speculation about our future selves. So like, who might I be were I to go to this place? what might I feel like if I were in this place? How might I behave differently? You know, what character might I assume were I to travel in that way? Does that resonate with you, Jenny?
Yeah.
Or not?
No, it does, but in order to figure out what the non-travel is and design an experience that even could potentially get you lost or something, you would have to figure out who those people are, because you can't create one generic experience. And in that way, I think a few of the examples I show are more about augmenting the actual travel experience and creating another dimension to that than actually creating an entire experience of travel that is brand new.
Let's get some questions from the audience. I believe, yes, please. Here, I'll bring up a microphone around, and we have Tyler Hoff, the graphic designer as well. Excuse me.
Yes, I'm Kathy Schnapper, and I'm addressing this primarily to Jenny, but to any of you who wanted to comment on it, and congratulations to all of you. Non-travel, it seems to me, has become an important tool in a field that you might want to explore, and that is archaeology. Archaeologists, it seems to me, are using some of the tools of non-travel in 4 different ways that are really, really innovative. One is identifying sites. Simply the satellite photos of Google Earth and such have shown archaeologists places that they didn't know existed that have the potential for further exploration. Secondly, for comparing two different sites. For example, if you're working in something in the Roman Empire, you can switch back and forth between 2 sites when you're in situ. If you're in Roman Egypt, you can look at something on the Italian peninsula and make a comparison that you couldn't make until very recently. Thirdly, it's allowed people to visit sites that simply were too fragile to be visited without destroying them. And fourthly, and perhaps most recently, and a very exciting thing, they've allowed people to reconstruct damaged sites. And the recent example is Palmyra, which has been destroyed by ISIS, or mostly destroyed. And very, very quickly, archaeologists and art historians were able to gather up travel pictures, make comparisons of what they knew about the sites, and use 3D printing to recreate a small portion of the Victory Arch from Palmyra, which apparently has just been installed or going to be installed in Trafalgar Square in London. So even in your work in New York, I think you might look at what some of the archaeologists are doing in places like Staten Island and how they're using these non-travel.
No, archaeology and what you've mentioned there, I mean, you've just explained a number of different examples, and I realized as soon as I touched on that topic in my research that there was a huge amount there. And my presentation today, at least, I really tried to highlight the idea of whether it's the importance of being there. So you mentioned academic uses of non-travel, of virtual reality, and also the kind of the more travel-related ones. But if you can combine those two and actually create spaces as part of the travel experience that allows you to wander into the ruins or to see the temples in Palermo, then you can improve the overall experience. But I would tend to lean towards the earlier examples you gave as examples that are beneficial, but not necessarily in terms of the travel kind of realm.
Thanks, Jenny. Another question. Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Tyler, the virtual reality designer, apparently. So I worked at the company that built a few of those VR experiences. But I wanted to ask about translation. Hortense, during your presentation, I immediately started thinking of those kind of Google search as a form of non-travel as well. Obviously, you're Googling the Mona Lisa, so in a way, you're kind of gathering souvenirs, etc. But within that, there's kind of a focus on 2D imagery. You're looking at it on a digital screen. You're capturing, museum spaces on a desktop computer. Maybe this is kind of a question for everyone as well. Is there a process of translation that changes the art? Is the Mona Lisa different because it's on a computer screen? Are the Dolomites different because you're viewing them in a headset, or are they the same Dolomites? Even when you're kind of looking at the future, is it your kind of imagination, your replication of the future in your head using tarot cards? Is it just because even if your predictions are correct, is there a certain layer of translation that happens, and how does that kind of manifest itself?
Can I go first? Yeah, that's a very good point, and I'm in my case, I want to say both, because that's a point that I really thought about. It's the point of in my thesis, aura and authenticity, and which of course Walter Benjamin talked about in his writings, and which is to some extent when you reproduce something so many times, and when it's shown and seen in different settings, in different spaces, on different media, then there is this kind of loss of aura to some extent. And of course, the question of the screen is huge in that, like that screen of the Mona Lisa on the Google image search, repeated with like different colors and like different people took them, and there were like some different version of it. So there is that. I think there is also something in my thesis, which is, yes, there is a loss of that, and which is why I think we still need museums, and museums are the places that will never kind of lose that aura. But at the same time, what this kind of like internet fast sharing culture has allowed is kind of for the artworks, it kind of like benefits their authenticity today, because we're using those tools and these platforms and the space of the internet so much. In a way, it just participates in their by being seen more. It benefits it makes them gain some kind of value at the same time, if that makes any sense.
Fantastic.
So I think in my case, both.
Fantastic. Hold on a second, Mark. I'm gonna just do one more question. Do you have a very quick follow-up to that?
Yeah. As far as design fiction and its prediction, it's more about generating better conversations. It's not about predicting better futures. It's finding ways to I keep saying step out. I need another phrase. Step out of yourself. It's about generating better conversations and around the objects and people that are being imagined, instead of just the same ones that are happening now. It's not about predicting. It's not, oh, there's going to be hoverboards in 10 years. It's what are people in 10 years? How are they going to be traveling? Here's some of our ideas, and then having conversations around that. It's not supposed to be like the seer possibilities of tarot.
Fantastic. One last question. I'm going to pass the mic to Molly, who's the chair of the program.
Hi. I'm Molly, but I'm speaking for our founding chair, Steve Heller, who emailed me a question. He couldn't be in the room this afternoon, but he's watching via live stream, and his question is for Mark. He says...
Hey, Steve. Thanks for this.
He says, great presentation. Does design fiction also give rise to false heroes and lying leaders? Our politicians are already fictional in many ways. How do we protect ourselves from fictionally designed human beings?
Can the web stream cut real quick? That again, it's not about predicting people. It's about giving yourself a chance to imagine things differently, to imagine things without your own preconceptions getting in the way. So it's a lot, like if I want to think about what Stephen Heller would want, that's a completely different exercise than what I would want. And I think we're not trying to create fictional people to represent what the future is going to be, but just give us a chance to look at what that future might be for them. So one of the examples I use frequently is, instead of imagining ourselves, we're a result of our parents. I'm a millennial, sorry. I'm a result of my parents. What would the children of millennials want versus what I would want? It gives us a framework to think about different people's needs versus our own. So it's not necessarily trying to predict Trump or any of those kind of things. It's more about stepping outside of ourselves. I need friend. But yeah. Does that answer your question, Steve? You can email.
Yes, that was Steve. He's got a very loud voice. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Huge congratulations to Jenni, Mark, and Hortense. Fantastic. Hooray. You guys did it.